Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I'm really excited to make Erza Scarlet's base outfit today. So here's the plan. It consists of a blue skirt and a white ruffled top with a collar. I have a separate video for both the bow as well as the boots. So if you want to check those videos out, I'll leave the link to the video in the description below. And go watch that after you've watched this video first, so you can find out how to make both of those to complete the outfit. So let's get started. So first thing is first is grabbing a pattern that you want to make your adjustments on. So I decided to use Danny Chu's schoolgirl uniform for this, mostly because it already has the collar piece. So the first thing is first, just trace it out. I have folded the little front bit over since we don't need the extra room for like buttons or a yoke or anything. So just leave that one all the way on the edge and trace around the rest. In order to create my own patterns, I do mix patterns up. So this here is the t-shirt pattern from Danny Chu's website, and I'm just lining up the front because I want to get the correct shaping without needing the darts. So I did want the neckline on the other piece, and instead now I'm just copying that new arm curve as well as the side seam, just because it is going to be t-shirts, so we can have that nice fitting. So that is basically all the adjustments I'm doing to this. And don't forget to mark your pieces with all the necessary marks that you need. So in this case front, and you can also use some arrows to show that you need to put it on fold, as you don't want to accidentally cut it out twice instead. And now we're going to do the same steps but for the back instead. So starting this one, I did start with the t-shirt pattern this time. I folded in half since the original pattern is a full, and I know I need to cut this on fold later on. And laying over this, I am just trying to figure out how to place a schoolgirl uniform, because I do need that neckline again. So this does take a little bit of figuring out and just trying, honestly. I decided to just line up the shoulder seams like I did here and just leave the bottom as it is. And that is the new neckline we're going to be using to make that collar work. And now it's time to cut out your new pattern pieces. And just remember which lines you want to keep and which ones you want to cut off. So those little 2-line markings are my way of signaling that those are the old lines and do not count in the pattern that I need to count. So especially in the neckline or in the armhole, that is really important to see which line I actually need to cut on. You can also use this by doing different colored pens, if that's easier for you. And now it's time to cut out those new pattern pieces from the fabric. So I've just folded my fabric in half, and I'm placing both the front and the back pieces on fold. Really important, place these pieces on fold, because we haven't included seam allowance, so you'll have to recut that otherwise if you don't place it on fold. So if you have enough fabric, maybe not the end of the world, but it's not fun to have to recut. I've had to do that plenty of times, so try and prevent it. Use markings on your patterns if needed to help remind you to place it on fold. Okay, rant over, place it on fold, and we're just going to continue by cutting these pieces out once they're all pinned in place. And the final piece that we need to cut from our fabric is the piece that we're going to use for our ruffle. And this is just a long rectangular piece. So it is up to you to decide how wide you want it to be. I just winged it and just saw how much space I had left and just cut a strip. I do recommend making the strip just a bit longer than you expect it to be, because we can always shorten it. So let's start by making the ruffle first. So I'm just making the ruffle by making pleats, so going one down and the next one up, so they meet each other in the middle. So this one's going down again, and the next one I will be folding upwards. So I just like it this way since it just gives a nice full ruffle. You can also do them all in the same direction, so all down or all up. It is fully up to you. I just figured that this one represented her look the most, so I just decided to meet them in the middle. And I'm just pinning all of these in place. Once it's pinned in place, place it on the front piece and check if it is long enough. I did undo one pleat there in the end, just to make it long enough. This will be hidden by the hemming later on. So as you can see, there's a really light pink mark on the fabric. This I did with chalk just to make sure I did a nice straight center line. And just go really slowly with sewing this. Take the pins out, don't sew over them. It is dangerous, so just be careful. Go nice and slow, make sure the pleats are in place. And this is what it will look like. So now we're going back to that front piece. I've just marked the center with 2 pins so I can get it nice and straight on there. And I'm just pinning this in place. It is kind of hard to keep it centered, so just do your best. I did shift it around several times and just did my best. Somehow with the whole sewing, it didn't end up being longer again, which is fine. I just cut off the extra bit later on. I could have placed it higher up, but since the collar will be attached, I don't want too much bulk in the front on the top there by the neckline. So basically, I am just going to sew down the center again. You can do it right on top of the line you previously sewed, or in my case, I did it just slightly off to the edge there, and I did sew 2 lines just to keep it nice and even. I wanted that look just to keep it like a little bit wider, hence I did the 2 lines just beside each other. And we're just gonna continue by sewing the shoulder seams like we would do on a normal t-shirt. That's just our next step. Go nice and slow on your sewing machine. If this is too thin and knit, use a walking foot like I mentioned in a previous video, or you can just use some tissue paper underneath just to keep it in place while sewing. And I'm just going to hem those little arm curves, and because this is knit fabric, it won't fray, so I just fold it over once. This also really came in handy because of the ruffle, so definitely use knit if you weren't already planning on it, because otherwise you won't really get it on the doll. So use knit, but it's also great since it doesn't fray. So just folding and pinning this in place, it is a little bit tedious. Just use a lot of pins and sew it really carefully and slowly. So let's time to continue with the collar piece. So if you watch the schoolgirl uniform, the blouse, you'll recognize a lot of the same steps, except for this time around, it is already a circle. It's not open in the front, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm just clipping all those little corners to remove all the extra bulk, because on this scale, even on scale for us, like real size, we don't want bulk in there. So it's really important to remove those extra clips, and then you want to turn it back right sides out. And I'm just pushing those corners out with a pair of scissors to get it nice and sharp and pinning that in place. So we are just going to top stitch around the edge there. So just the top and a little bit down the sides. And your collar is going to look like this. It is a little bit folded down and then around. For more in depth on doing the whole collar, do watch that video I mentioned on making the schoolgirl uniform blouse, because it's a lot more clear. So we're just going to pin this in place. And I am starting by finding the center of both the collar as well as the back piece, because I just find that the easiest. You can stretch it to match if needed, which is great about knits. I like stretching it. So I am being really careful to just pin only one edge there. So it is on the inside, as you can see. And it does make it a bit difficult, but it also gives it a really nice clean finished edge at the end. If you can't be bothered, or if you just find it too difficult, you can always just pin both of those open ends together and just sew it once, rather than having to sew it now and then flipping it over later on to tuck in that extra edge. It is fully up to you, but I just think this is the better look, even though it's difficult. And another little tip, if it is too hard for you to get the sewing machine underneath here, because it is already small and it is also round, you can always sew it by hand. I have debated many times on sewing this by hand, but I really wanted to do it by machine since it would be stronger. But it is fully up to you. I'm just giving you some pointers and hints. But just pin that fully around and get that in place. Just clip extra pieces if needed, like I'm doing now. And just on the front there, as you can see, I do overlap them slightly because it does give that nice finished edge when it is fully finished. If you're going to make this and you want to wear it with like a bow, like for this Erza Scarlet, you will hide a lot of the imperfections. And with that finally pinned in place, you're just gonna sew all the way around. Keep everything out of the way. If you do catch any part, just unpick it and re-sew that little bit. So this is what it will look like. I'm just pushing it out to make it look as best as possible. And I do still have that little inside seam that I need to put in place. So I have just top stitched that, so pinning it first and then top stitching it in place. I didn't actually get to film that, so sorry about that one. But this is what the collar will look like. You just fold over that little edge. So just finish up sewing the t-shirt by sewing the side seams, just pinning that in place first and then sewing that in place. And the t-shirt is almost completed. It is just time to do the hem. And I'm just folding this over once, just choosing roughly how wide I want it to be and pinning that in place. And that's it for the t-shirt. All that's left to do is turn it inside out and just get it nice and even, the collar. And that's it. You have finished your beautiful Erza Scarlet t-shirt, and all that's left now is placing it on your smart doll. And this is what mine looked like, and I'm very happy with it. So let's get started with the skirt. So just a little thing, this skirt has a very detailed video on its own. I do skip over a lot of the things. I'll just show you roughly how I ended up doing this and the changes that I made. So pleating this, I really winged it from the start. I didn't measure, I just took the strip of fabric I had and just did my best. So I am pleating this the same way that I pleated her ruffle, so going one to the center and then the other side towards that center. So one up, one down, just like I mentioned before. And I'm just continuing this all the way to the end of the strip, and afterwards I'll measure with the waistband and I'll see if I need to cut off. Spoiler alert, I did need to cut off some of the extra room. But it's completely fine. And you just continue pinning this all the way around. I don't measure, I just have a look how wide I want each pleat to be. This was just the way I wanted to do things for this whole project, winging it. If you haven't noticed, I do a lot of that. A lot of these are also the first time that I make it, and I will probably not make it again. So that's just how I roll. Anyway, I overlocked all the edges and I just top stitch that edge to keep them in place. And I'm just continuing by doing the hem. A lot easier to do the hem before pleating it, but it worked out fine. It's up to you which way you do it. I just forgot to do it, so I'm doing it now when I remembered. And just top stitch that all the way around, and I did do 2 lines, if you can see. One very narrow one at the bottom and one further up, just to keep it in place. This just gave it a really nice finished look. Just a little heads up, this waistband I did not end up using. I didn't like the look of it, but I did end up using it for size reference. So I just sewed those pieces together and top stitched, overlocked all the way around, top stitched around the edges there, cut the curves, do all of that. And afterwards I just decided I didn't like it. It was too bulky, it was not nice, it wouldn't fit properly. So here I'm just deciding to use a new piece. I did not curve it, it is just one piece, easy, that I just get to fold over. And I've just gone ahead and overlocked all the way around, and I'm just measuring here how long it needs to be for the skirt. So I did cut this piece by measuring from the existing waistband that I made, that I just showed you. If you do want the really clear instructions, there is a video on its own, so watch that. But as you can see, I just lined it up, got the right size that I needed, and I got my own waistband. And here I'm just measuring how much of the skirt is too much and cutting off all the extra space. So here you can see it is right where the pleat ends, so I will cut that off. I did pin this, but don't pin it yet. So just cut off your space and then sew up the little end bit. Now is the time to attach your waistband, just like I did here. It just saves a few more struggles. And all that's left to do now is fold it down. So decide whether it's the left side or the right side that overlaps, and the overlapping side just gets to be tucked under really nicely, and the other side doesn't matter as much. As you can see here, you can just see my white overlocking, and that's purely because it won't be seen. The other side will overlap it. And I'm just pinning this in place, just folding it nice and smooth as possible and top stitching that around. And that's done for the skirt. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed making this outfit. It was so fun. And don't forget to check out the description box to find the videos to both the bow and the boots. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. Leave a comment down below on ideas you'd like to see next, and of course any questions are welcome and I'll happily answer those. If you're wanting to see how I made her armor and her sword, don't forget to check those out. I will be uploading those videos shortly, and once they are, I will be adding that to the description box below. But subscribe in the meantime to get notified when the video releases on her awesome armor, which I had a lot of fun creating. I'll see you all next time. Bye!